This is Movers and Shakers, where we interview the upcoming generation of make it happen multifamily investors to share their story.
Welcome to the Movers and Shakers podcast. My name is Gino Barbaro, co-founder of Jake and Gino, multifamily investor, educator, father, mentor, and I'm joined by my co-host, my brosif, Joshua Rusin. Josh, I'm pausing because you're looking good today. No COVID haircut. You're looking really sharp today, bro. How you doing?
You know, doing well, and I'm actually glad you brought that up. So very grateful I was able to spend Easter and the week after with you and your family, and also great for your wife, Julia. She has the skills to cut hair, and all the barbershops are closed down, and I was caught between a rock and a hard place. Do I let it grow out and look homeless, or do I get the quarantine buzz cut? And neither were an appealing decision. So grateful as all can be. How about you, Gino?
Doing good. You got a great end of the bargain, right? You got a free haircut, you got free food, you got free entertainment with the kids. What more could you ask for that week, right? It was an amazing week. It was really grateful. I was grateful that you guys were down here. That week we lived the growth mindset because Dylan was down here, you were down here. We're creating content. We're just making it happen and having a lot of fun and making the best of a pretty crappy situation. So it was enjoyable. I had a great time, bro.
Love it. All right, let's get into today's guest. So today we have Daniel Twito. A little bit about him. He's got 8 years experience in real estate investing, with the last 2 years being focused on multifamily. He's passively invested in 310 units and actively invested in another 160 units. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on here, boys. I really appreciate it.
Of course. All right, so I want to get into a little bit of your story because you're young, Daniel. First off, how old are you?
31.
All right, making it happen. So when you and I first connected, it was just under 2 years ago. You were working in the auto glass industry, right? Kind of working for yourself. Tell me a little bit about, in that, your experience with real estate, why multifamily, and let's kick the story off.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'll go back a little further just to, paint the picture. But I grew up in what you would consider a city in Iowa, like 35,000 people, college town. And grew up with 5 brothers and sisters. I went to the Merchant Marine Academy, which is a small, almost like a trade school. It's a federal service academy where you either have 2 options. You're either on the deck side or you're an engineer. So the whole like 4 years is all planned out. You go to sea for 300 days while you're at school learning the trade. So I chose, as the analytical mind, I chose the engineering route. I thought, engineering seems like a good trade. I'm, chemistry, science, math, analytics, all that stuff made sense to me. So I went the engineering route, and I worked on ships and I worked on oil rigs for about 5 years. And during that time, and even growing up, I always had this idea of, passive income or, investing in things, and I did what every good college educated, American is taught, 401k, IRA, college education, get a good job, all these things. And I was investing in 2008 and 2009 and 2010 and 11 and 12. And that entire time, it like long-term investments. And over the course of a few years, I wasn't seeing, I didn't have the control in the investment. I was watching companies that, I had done research on and, listened to advice on, okay, put your money in this retirement fund. And it wasn't, there were no returns, over the course of that time. And, maybe in 20 years, I'd look back and be like, well, that was kind of during a recession. You may not have the returns you're looking for, but it forced me to look outside of the box. And I started to get educated and realized, hey, there's other investment vehicles. You could, own a business, or you could invest in real estate. And that's when I started to get hooked on real estate. I invested in 2 different duplexes in Charleston, South Carolina, and ended up being a 3rd one. So we did kind of the BRRRR method, 2012. There was a foreclosure. We bought it. We put a lot of money into it. We renovated it. We rented it out for about a year, and then we refinanced it with a commercial loan. And so that got it off of, and we were working offshore. My buddy's also working offshore. And we did that 3 times in Charleston. That was kind of the momentum I started with in real estate. And in 2015, as I was thinking about, different streams of income. Okay, I loved being offshore on the oil rigs because you had that time freedom. You were there for a month working long hours, but then you could come home and you had that time off, and that's great as you're young and you're traveling and you're enjoying your life. But I thought, okay, long term, if I want to have a family, I want to provide for them, I have multiple streams of income. Is there something else I could do? And so I got hooked up with my uncle doing auto glass. So we started in the auto. We were running across 4 states. He brought me in to do the operations, and that's what got me to Dallas. So I got to Dallas, started running the operations in 4 different states for this auto glass business, and that's kind of the spur that got me going towards auto glass. So I ended up in DFW and doing that, and then in 2018 was when I started to get in that education, learning more about real estate, and realizing auto glass wasn't necessarily, the long term that I wanted to be in. I found my passion being more, geared towards real estate, which is where I had my success in Charleston, in those duplexes. And so that was kind of, where I ended up. So I moved from, the auto glass industry into real estate in 2018. I started making that as I started getting educated. I joined Jake and Gino, the wheelbarrow profits. Gino, I don't know if you remember this conversation, but it was on Bigger Pockets. I had started to look into some different education programs, and I messaged you out of the blue. I said, "Hey, Gino, I'm looking for, some education." And you had said, do you know who I am? you kind of said, "You know who I am?" I was like, "No, I you just had made a post on a Bigger Pockets forum," and I thought, let me reach out to this guy. He seems like he's got a good handle on the real estate space. And so that's where the journey started in multifamily, was, that message.
So I want to, Josh, before you ask a question, that is really important for all the listeners out there. That is called the go-giver mentality. And Daniel, one of the reasons why I was able to reach out to you is because I wanted to help other people at a time. I had just become financially free. And I'm like, okay, I can take calls for free. I don't have to worry about myself. I want to provide value to others. And that's where I was at that stage in my life, where I still am right now. And it's important. And you're never too big for your britches. My job is to help people out there. My job is to inspire people. That one conversation that I have with somebody, that one kind word that I can say to somebody, that one motivating thought that I can give to somebody, that can change a person's life, a person's trajectory. So that's why we're here on this planet, to make those connections, to help people out. And for me, doing that and reaching out to you and making that connection, that's my dopamine hit. Every time a student says, "I just quit my job," like you, Daniel, and went into multifamily full time, that is awesome. If you've never had that feeling where you've helped somebody out, I mean, as parents, once we have our children, that's a dopamine hit for me, because I have my kids. I'm their mentor. I'm their role model. As they're growing, I can see their growth and development. I can see their characteristics. And that's really amazing for me. I love that. But it's the same thing with the Jake and Gino community. Every time a student says that they have a deal, or they have something on the contract, or they're leaving their job, or they're cash flowing, that is so exciting to me. And I challenge everybody out there, read the book, The Go-Giver. And if you can adopt that mentality, the more people you're going to help out there, the more money that's going to come back to you. Josh, I know you want to jump in and ask a question.
There's a ton to unpack into this. So one, I remember that exact moment, having that conversation with Gino. You reached out, you went to a 3-day seminar. I think they were asking, 40 to 50 grand for their top tier package. And you were like, "Hey, look, I know I need education. Should I do this?" Right? Looking for reassurance. And that was good, because you want to make sure, trust but verify, you're taking the right path. And then Daniel, that's when Gino connected you and I, and the doors really opened. So I definitely remember that. However, before we dive into that and moving forward, there's some really powerful points there that you brought up that I give you a lot of credit. In your early to mid 20s, you're able to kind of see. So the traditional path, going school to job to save for retirement, you realized you had no control of that 401k, and that path may not get you to where you want to be. I guess most people don't realize that until it's too late, right? Until they're mid 50s, 60, going to retire, and then they realize that nest egg they've saved their whole life for isn't enough. Let me ask you a little bit more, how did you start to see that path wasn't going to take you where you wanted to be? And then of all the niches you looked at, why real estate with the duplexes?
Yeah. So I don't know if it was necessarily that those paths wouldn't take me there. I think that, and we're realizing that with COVID right now, how little control we have in some cases, how little control we have, even when we have control, or we feel like we have control, or we've tried to get control, how things can shake up or change very quickly. And so that illusion of, you're in control completely of everything that happens is just not true. But, so with the engineering route and the auto glass, Gino, before the show, we were talking about, being good at your W-2 and kind of going that route. And people that are good in multifamily are good at their W-2. They're good at, they're pushing that way. And I think that, for me, it was not necessarily being, kind of going from the W-2 and just realizing that multifamily real estate, having the success early on in real estate in those duplexes, having that success kind of just brought me back to it and realized, okay, this may be more attractive for my skill set, something I can do long term. I can create multiple streams of income in it, and in real estate just made so much sense to me. With the analytical mind, sometimes things make more sense in business, and it's a real asset. Real estate is a real asset. And so despite that illusion of control, it was an opportunity for, more control. And I thought, okay, this is a real asset. I can understand this. It's not, derivatives or paper or, something that, I'm not as familiar with, or I may not have as much control over, I can do the management of it. And something that I kind of saw as a tried and true method of wealth creation. And that's why, I made the transition into it.
So Daniel, I'm going to walk through the transition real quick for all the listeners one more time. College, job, business, real estate. Now, one of the reasons I know why you became successful in multifamily is because you were in the business already. You were already a business owner. So multifamily really is like running a business. That's really what it comes down to. And you'd mentioned something else. I want to mention the word focus. Can you give the listeners an idea of how you took the leap? How you said, okay, I'm going to leave the business. I'm going to leave the security and get into multifamily. What did that feel like? What did that look like? And, discuss a little bit of entrepreneurship, that lonely feeling, that hard feeling. So let's talk about that focus and what that feeling was of leaving your business.
That's a great question. And I think it's really, really important because when you jump into real estate, when you jump in, we're in the age of information where there is so much content out there and so much information. It's amazing that you're listening to this podcast. If you're on here right now, whoever's listening, really, there's so much information out there and there's so many gurus. So it's not about just having information. It's about having the right information, the right mentorship. And so, when you find the right mentorship, in Wheelbarrow Profits, then you're starting to unpack the information that's in there. You start to, you're diving in. If you're serious about it, or if you're committed or even have an inkling of, interest, you start to dive in. And it's like a fire hose, or, you're just sitting there right in front of a fire hose, just blowing you in the face. And as you start to, gather the information, slowly your focus becomes more and more narrow. You start to get more educated, and you realize, you focus in on what your goals are, what you want to achieve, and you kind of have to do it from a perspective of like understanding yourself. You have to be a little self-aware, and then you have to use that information that you're learning to make the best decision for yourself. And as you get more focused, it gets really, really narrow. It gets really, really narrow and laser focused. You have a ton of conversations, you get a ton of education, and then you make that commitment. You make the decision that, this is what I want to do. And this is the path that I want to go down. And, and that's the decision. That's the commitment that you make. You burn the ships and go. And so, when you go from that W-2, if you're thinking, hey, multifamily or real estate is something that I want to do, it doesn't have to be, quite that dramatic, burn the ships, and you can make a slower transition into it. You don't have, you can slowly replace your W-2 income. I'm just, getting that laser focus and being committed to what your goals are, being committed to what you're setting out to do. That was the path that I took. And that's, if I would give advice to somebody or say, what it takes, or being laser focused, that's it. That's kind of the what happened in my experience.
All right. So you bring up two really good points there. You mentioned, we're in the information age. There's tons of information out there, and it's about getting the right information or the right teacher. What advice do you have for the listeners about having the right mentor and picking the right person to learn from?
That's another great question. So, trust but verify. Just like you said, Josh, you're like trusting and you're verifying. Find the mentor that speaks to you. I can remember the first time that Gino and I talked. He's got 6 kids, and I've got 5 brothers and sisters. He homeschools his kids, and I was homeschooled. So all those things, and then on top of that, I want to homeschool my kids. I mean, this is more personal stuff, and I'm talking, that emotional connection. But when you're choosing a mentor, you're connecting with that person, and kind of, you want to see under the surface of, what their goals are. As a mentor, do they line up with what my goals are? Do they have any desire to give back to the community? Do they, Bob Berg, that book, The Go-Giver. Mm-hmm. I love that book. Do they have, do they have that type of mentality where they're wanting to give back to the community and things like that? So as you're finding a mentor, you're getting educated, do your due diligence, just like you would a passive investment in multifamily. You get excited, right? You get excited because they're selling you on their idea or their education. You look in and you realize, oh, wow, they don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk. Their students are doing deals. The education platform is amazing. They're adding more value to it every day. Every time you look, every lesson that they're learning, they're sharing. That's pretty powerful. It's not just, you signed up, they gave you a set amount of information, and as times change, that's it. You kind of you got the web portal and that's it. There's more information coming out and sharing in that community where a lot of people find their partners. They find their partners in real estate through these, whether it's a local meetup or this, mentoring program, an education company. I know I listen to podcasts and it seems like daily on, in the Jake and Gino community, guys are finding their partners, and the guys that, have a similar mentality that want to do business together. And that's awesome.
So what's awesome? What I just found out? That you want to homeschool your kids. That's awesome. That's what I like, and it's funny, 20 years ago, I was the weird guy, right? Now, all of a sudden, everyone's going to have to start homeschooling their kids, and it's an amazing thing. And I like what you said that about with mentors, because it's important, because if you're learning from somebody and you don't have that connection, do you trust that person's information? I mean, like that's, I think, what ultimately what it comes down to. And for me, I had a lot of my mentors, and I found out that we had very similar, like you did. And I could say, okay, I can trust them, and you'll take more action. You'll do more for somebody else than you will for yourself. So you don't want to let your mentor down, right? So you're going to do the work. So that's I love that connection that you have with the mentor and with working with somebody, because ultimately you want to trust them. And Daniel, one thing that you said that's very important, make sure that your mentors are actually out there doing it. And, business is ever changing. It's ever evolving. And, you want to be into it. You want to be in the business. I think that's truly, truly important. Let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsors.
At Rand Capital, we're focused on providing the best financing option for each deal and every client. Our personalized service, along with our blue-collar work ethic, will give you the peace of mind to know that we will take the stress out of the financing process so that you can focus on other aspects of your business. For more information and to find out how Rand Capital can help you find the best loan for your deal, visit randcapllc.com to start the conversation.
Josh, this is normally when you start the short answers, but we're just getting the chainsaw going on this interview, right? I mean, there's so much in here. I'm going to recap this thing at the end, but there is so much to bite off over here. We haven't even talked about Daniel getting into deals, right? Because I want everyone to understand it's really about mindset. This is about mindset. Daniel, how old are you again? You're 31, right?
31.
Okay, so there goes the limiting belief of being too young. Daniel, do you have $7 million in the bank?
No.
Okay, there goes the limiting belief about not having enough money, right? The major steps that Daniel did was he was living in his subconscious like the majority of us. 95% of your life is lived in the subconscious. And the subconscious is go to work, get a good job, W-2, feel comfortable. That 5% of your conscious mind says, I need to push myself. I know there's something better out there. And if Daniel, who lives in a town of 35,000 people, can tap into that, everybody listening on the show can tap into it also. You just need to do what Daniel said, to focus on what you want. That's really, really important. Let's dive into the first deal. That first deal that you did, how did you find it? Were people telling you were crazy?
I don't think people thought I was crazy. I didn't run around, telling a lot of people, in the beginning, and it's a humbling experience, when you feel like you found a passion or you want to get into something. Yes, they there's probably, they didn't say it to my face, that you're crazy, but there's probably some underlying feeling of like, they want to see it to believe it. I mean, it's just because the age of information, right? There's so much out there that is not true. It's hard to trust. It's hard to trust. It's hard to create that, with, that track record of, hey, ethical behavior, and, this is a real deal, and, all those things. I mean, it takes years to build that trust. And so, I wouldn't fault anybody for thinking, he's a little crazy. You have to be a little bit, hyper focused, and, some would call that crazy, crazy to jump into something like that. So, but finding the deal, it was all about relationships, It was a national broker it was an on-market deal. So, and this is in 2019 when, it's a seller's market. There's a lot of buyers, and it was through the relationship that we had an opportunity, to get into the deal, to be a best and final. It was the education that, gave us the confidence to push the deal and know that there was more opportunity in the deal, than what others may have seen. And so that was a huge opportunity, and you don't know what you don't know. And in 60 days, so we were getting into the deal in March of 2019. We closed June 12th of 2019. And just another 60 days down the line, you look at that deal, and if I could have bought 10 of that deal, I would do it. If I could have 10 more of that deal, I would do it. And so that was an awesome outcome that we had with that deal. So
I love that. So Josh, before we go to the short answers, a couple of things. Crazy is different, I guess, in this society, because I think we're brainwashed into thinking that being a W-2 employee, and I was talking to Daniel off camera, being a W-2 employee, everyone thinks there's safety in there. You don't need hyper focus. And I'll challenge everyone out there who's a W-2 employee who's working for an employer. You need to give that employer your best, because that employer is paying you, that employer is paying for your benefits, and you need to be on your game. And if you want to grow in the company, you need to be just like an entrepreneur. You need to be constantly learning, constantly focusing, constantly growing, constantly taking risks within the company, constantly being innovative. These are all things we say about an entrepreneur. But if you want to be a successful W-2 employee and work up the corporate ladder, you need those skill sets also. You need to take risk. You need to tell the boss he's wrong or she's wrong when that might be going against the grain. You need to step outside the box. You need to be crazy and to be different also if you want to be successful as a W-2. So I give a shout out to everyone who's in the corporate world who's really grinding it out there and being different and working up the corporate ladder and working 80 hours a week, because there's a lot of you out there that are doing it. And I think that you are all entrepreneurs in a different kind of way. Maybe you might not be doing it by yourself. You have a company working in it, but you have an entrepreneurial mindset. So I think that's really important to distinguish out there. And what it comes down to is having that laser focus and being committed.
Yeah, let's dive into some of the short answer questions here. So, all right, Daniel, your favorite book and why?
My favorite book is The Greatest Salesman in the World by O.G. Mandino.
Oh yeah.
And I like it because it's real brief. It's like 100 pages, and it reads like a parable, and it's an easy read, and it's very uplifting. Have you read it? I don't know if
I haven't read it. No, but I know
me either.
Yeah.
It's sold, a bunch of copies, and people probably it's out there somewhere, like up there with, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, those are both, kind of paradigm shifting books for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
O.G. Mandino, I always give a copy out. To people, because I think, it's just a lot of people are, if you give them 300-page book or 400-page book, they look at it and they're like, this is, I already got homework, I already got my job. I don't need this. And so I like to gift them a 100-page book, and I say it's a short read, and they kind of laugh, but it's easy. You peruse through it and you get through it. And then at the end they go, oh, wow, thanks for that book. I appreciate it. So, that's why I like that book so much.
Thank you.
Love it. What about your best habit for success?
Best habit for success would have to be working out and meditation, just staying energized, and when I say, meditation, I mean like a 5 or 10 minute, this goes back to that kind of laser focus is, kind of in the morning, just spending a few minutes to, focus and think about, what you have, you want to accomplish that day and stuff like that. So just keeping your energy level up that way is super important.
Love that. All right. So there's a lot of golden nuggets in this episode, and I want to hit on one that stood out big to me. And then I know Gino's going to add a bunch to it. So if you listen to the words, Daniel used commit, make a decision, burn the ships, hyper focus. It's that mindset and going all in that leads to success. Now, if you compare that to the other mindset of, hey, I'm just going to dip a toe in the water and see how it goes. What's going to happen is you're going to retreat at the first sign of danger, and business is hard, right? It's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it. But when you're committed, you push through those hurdles and those obstacles. Gino, what do you have to add to that?
Well, Josh, there's so much here. So when I recap Daniel's story of going from college to getting a job, to getting into business, and to getting ultimately into real estate, I think every step of the way he was super hyper focused. I think Daniel knows what he wants. And I think everybody on the podcast, focus on what you want. Don't focus on what you don't want. Because if you're focusing on what you don't want, you're not going to get that, but you're not getting what you do want. So that's really important. Focus on what you want out there. You see, the vehicle to real estate is really important, and it's a powerful vehicle. I think that's the second thing that we need to talk about. The third thing is, like you said, Josh, laser focus, committed, the proper education, the right education. There's so much education out there. And I can end with this, Josh. Education times action equals results. You could take the massive action, not have the right education, you won't get the results. You need to couple both of those, and you need to have a long mindset. The long mindset in multifamily, or in being an entrepreneur, or being a successful W-2 employee, you have to have that mindset of you're in it for the long haul, and you're in it with the growth mindset of being able to learn every step of the way. Learn, be committed, grow, and just rinse and repeat.
Daniel, how can the listeners get a hold of you?
So they can either call me on my cell phone, 319-830-9034. They can email me at daniel@lmmaxrealty.com. That's my realtor email, or they can go to the website, lmmaxrealty.com. That's the broker website. Anyway like that, it's fine.
Well, listen, Daniel, I want to thank you for being an amazing guest on the show and sharing your Movers and Shakers story. Now, guys, if you want to be the next Movers and Shakers guest, email me, josh@jakeandgino.com. Now, if you like the show, please leave us a review. And until next time, let's make it a Movers and Shakers week. See you, everybody.
Thanks, Daniel, for being on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.